So imagine you're asleep in your bed late at night and then suddenly out of nowhere, FBI agents break in your front door, throw flashbang grenades, drag you out of your home, put you in handcuffs, and then hold you at gunpoint, all because they actually got the wrong house. And now here's the kicker, that's exactly what just happened to a couple out of Georgia, and their case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court just issued a landmark 9-0 decision in their favor against the FBI. This decision could have major implications not just for this one family, but also all gun owners concerned about government overreach, wrongful raids, or just simply mistaken law enforcement actions. So let's break down what happened in this critical case. Now, before we jump into this video, I want to thank one of the main supporters of this channel, which is 1st Phorm. 1st Phorm has amazing supplements. I use their protein powder, their Formula 1 protein powder all the time. My favorite is actually the mint chocolate chip one. I also use their protein bars all the time. Actually, I have a half-eaten one right here that I had before this video. This is their chocolate peanut butter pretzel. I love all their, protein powder, supplements, all of that. But one of the cool things about them is they're also pro-freedom, pro-America. They support the Second Amendment and what we talk about here on the channel. If you want to support an amazing company that supports us here on the channel, check them out using the link down below. Check them out in the pinned comment. And if you order something $100 or more, you will get free shipping. And then also you get a no hassle 30-day trial of whatever you get. And if you don't like it, you can return it for 30 days and you can get 100% back. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we're going to be discussing a recent 9-0 unanimous decision issued by the Supreme Court, which all gun owners should be aware of. This case is called Martin versus United States. This case comes out of the suburban Atlanta area where in 2017, the FBI executed a pre-dawn raid against a couple. The only problem is they got the wrong house and they had the wrong address. The family inside sued the federal government and the FBI under the Federal Tort Claims Act, which is also known as the FTCA. The question for the Supreme Court became essentially, does the federal government get to walk away from liability, or can ordinary citizens hold them accountable just like private persons would be accountable if they made the same type of mistake? At its core, this case isn't about the Second Amendment or just gun rights in general, but it does have major implications for all gun owners, and this is something everybody should be aware of. And you may be asking, why is that? Because it deals with government accountability, wrongful raids, and whether or not the federal government can be held responsible when agents like this one in the FBI go too far or make reckless mistakes. And now the Supreme Court's 9-0 decision has overruled what the lower court said, and they have sent this back down for re-review, which is good news for all of us. Now, here's what happened in this case. Essentially, the FBI special agent Lawrence Guerrero was tasked with leading a pre-dawn raid at a home where suspected gang members were believed to be hiding. The target address was a specific address, but instead of just going there, the FBI agent here used his personal GPS device. I believe it was on his phone. His GPS routed him to a completely different home where the plaintiffs here, Katrina Martin, she lived there with her partner, and then she also had a 7-year-old son who also lived in that home. When the FBI agents arrived at the home without warning, they smashed in the front door. They detonated some flashbang grenades inside the home. They pulled out the partner, and he was actually, I believe, hiding in a closet because, when they broke into the home late at night, I guess he was afraid, so decided to hide in the closet. So they dragged him out, handcuffed him. They also grabbed Katrina Martin. They pulled her out of the home half-dressed, arrested her, held her at gunpoint, and then they also took the child. Now, after the agents had detained all the family members, they did a search of the home, and while performing the search, one of the FBI agents noticed some mail on one of the tables, and he noticed that it was a completely different address. And that's when the FBI agents kind of had this huge oh crap moment, and they realized that they had the wrong home. And as a result of this, the FBI and these officers were sued by Katrina Martin and the family members. They brought a claim under the Federal Tort Claims Act, also known as the FTCA, which is the law that allows ordinary people to sue the federal government for certain wrongful acts by federal employees when those employees are acting in the scope of their job. Now, normally the federal government and its employees are shielded by qualified immunity, so they can't be sued. However, the FTCA is one of those situations where the government has agreed to let individuals bring claims in court based on specific claims. The FTCA comes with a long list of exceptions, however, where you essentially could not sue Two of those exceptions were at issue specifically in this case. So in this case, the family tried to sue the FBI and the agents here under the FTCA, but the government claimed that they fell under some of those exceptions to the FTCA, including the discretionary function exception. They claimed that the FBI agent here using his personal GPS and getting the wrong address was a discretionary function, and therefore the agents were shielded by immunity. When the family filed the lawsuit in a federal district court in Georgia, the government moved to dismiss the case, arguing that both the intentional tort and discretionary function exceptions barred these types of claims under the FTCA, and the district court essentially sided with the FBI and the federal government. The case was then appealed to the 11th Circuit, and on review, the 11th Circuit also ruled in favor of the FBI. The appeals court reasoned that the lead agent had discretion in how he prepared the raid, and even though that discretion led to a mistake, he could not be sued. Now, this case was then eventually appealed, and it went for a petition to the United States Supreme Court. The Supreme Court granted review, reviewed the case, and recently, at the end of their last term, issued a unanimous 9-0 decision in favor of the family. So they ruled against the FBI. The Supreme Court, in a unanimous opinion written by Justice Gorsuch, vacated what the 11th Circuit said in their ruling and sent it back down to the 11th Circuit for a new ruling. The Supreme Court held first that the law enforcement proviso only modifies the intentional tort exception. It doesn't override all the other exceptions to the FTCA. Now, that essentially is kind of technical, and it deals with a broader technical issue that they were reviewing. Second, and more importantly, the court rejected the 11th Circuit's broad immunity claim. The government is not automatically immune just because the officer's actions are tied to federal policy or could be characterized as consistent in some way with federal law. That's not how the FTC is meant to work, and so the Supreme Court ruled against the FBI and overrode what the 11th Circuit said. They said essentially instead liability under the FTCA is judged by state law. The statute says that the government is liable if under similar circumstances a private person would be liable under the law of that state. And what this means is that the courts don't get to invent just this blanket immunity like the 11th Circuit wanted. Instead, they have to look at the state law, and they have to look at would an individual, a private person under the same situation making the same mistake, could they be held liable? Based on that, the Supreme Court vacated the 11th Circuit's decision and remanded the case for further consideration in light of that new ruling. And that just happened. They issued their mandate, sending this case back down to the 11th Circuit for a new review of this case. Now, the Supreme Court did not decide whether the discretionary function exception actually bars this lawsuit. Instead, they sent this back to the 11th Circuit, and on remand, that appeals court will have to decide whether the family's claims are barred by additional exceptions like that discretionary function. So essentially, was it just purely discretionary for that FBI agent to use his own personal GPS and get the address wrong? Is he still shielded in that type of situation? Now, you may be asking yourself, what does any of this have to do with gun owners and how does this impact us? Well, here's why this is important for gun owners. Wrong house raids, mistaken identity arrest, or excessive force situations disproportionately impact law-abiding gun owners, and then we see it happens quite often. There's a lot of high-profile cases where the ATF raids an individual, the FBI raids an individual, state, California DOJ or someone raids an individual, and as a result of maybe a wrongful raid or a huge mistake, individuals get harmed. If the government can hide behind discretion every time it messes up, then there's no accountability. However, the Supreme Court ruling in this Martin case narrows the government's ability to avoid lawsuits by claiming just simply broad immunity. It reinforces that federal agents can be held accountable when they recklessly invade someone's home or misuse their powers. So that's what happened in another significant 9-0 unanimous decision by the Supreme Court. It will now be interesting to see, how does this play out at the 11th Circuit level? How do they consider this after what the Supreme Court just said? Like I mentioned, the Supreme Court has now issued its mandate. So this has been sent back down to the 11th Circuit, and the 11th Circuit is going to decide if they want to work this up again, re-review it on their own, or send this back down to the district court for a completely new review. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. As we get more information, I will let you guys know. If you like this video and you would like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to subscribe to the channel. Also, you can check out my website, armscholar.com. Over there, we have a lot for you guys. We have the free legal guide that you can sign up for. It's a free PDF. All you do is put in your email and we email you over that PDF. But as always, thank you so much for all of your support. And never forget, this nation was built by Armed Scholars, and this nation will be maintained by Armed Scholars.